Hello, chess friends, and welcome to the of Chess channel, and welcome back to the mega match between Stockfish 13 against Leela C0. So, although this mega match is over, and meanwhile also some other tournaments have been played in the top engine level, I still wanted to cover more games from this mega match because in this mega match we have seen some beautiful attacking, and attacking brilliance is also some great gambits. We have seen the King's Gambit, we have seen also the Danish Gambit, Budapest Gambit was also on the board, so we have seen really some beautiful, sharp attacking games by both sides. What we didn't see is so far in Evans Gambit. I would love to see an Evans Gambit played by Stockfish 13, but what we didn't see also is the so-called Vienna Gambit. The Vienna Gambit is similar to the King's Gambit, but it's a little bit different with the move knight to c3, which is the main difference between the common King's Gambit and also this Vienna Gambit. The move knight to c3 is preventing some Falkbeer counter Gambit ideas with the move d5. I'll explain you what's all about. So the Vienna Gambit, as I said, it's similar to the King's Gambit, and be prepared. This is again really a wild game played with some great tactics all over the board. The dynamics are all over the board, so it's a perfect opening for the fish. So let's check out now the game. Here e4 played by Stockfish. We have e5 by Leela c0. Now comes this move knight to c3, knight to c6. This line has been pre-arranged so far by the organizer. Now comes the move f4, so it's a gambit line. After e takes f4, now d4, queen to h4, and you see now with the move knight to c3 there is this line, this Falkbeer counter gambit. D5 could be an opportunity. Now we can recapture the pawn with d5 or e takes d5. After move queen to h4, we have now king to e2, and now comes this move d5. So that's actually the huge difference with the move d5. Black is trying to open the position in front of white's king, but the problem is now this isn't the best of moves which black can play. A better idea is here, instead of this move d5, to play the move f5. F5 is more accurate because the move d5 you can recapture with the pawn, or you can recapture it with the knight. So let's see now what happened. d5 played by Leela c0. So this was the last prearranged move, and now e takes d5. You cannot take this pawn with knight to d5. It's a suicide. It's basically game over. If white takes out the pawn with the knight, it's a tricky line. Knight to d5 is not good because you get bishop to g4. You have to cover with the knight, knight to f3, and now queenside castle will happen. And maybe you can take out the pawn on f4, but the problem is now this one, knight to f6. And you see now, after potential knight to f6, the problem is now the knight is on c6. This knight is still on c6, so we can take out this pawn on d4. We don't have to even take out the knight on f6 here. We have to play simply knight to d4, and it's simply lost game for white. If you try something like, I don't know, king to e3, then you get even knight to f5, and you lose at least the queen, and I think you're going to get checkmated in a couple more moves. So here, after move knight to f5, I think it's a position that white has to resign. So let's go back. That's why after move d5, so we shouldn't take with the knight, so that's why e takes d5 is more accurate. The problem is now for black that the knight has to retreat after bishop to g4, knight to f3, and you see now the knight has to come to e7, and it's not on c6 anymore, where it could continue the pressure around the square d4. So that's why it's a huge difference to take out with the pawn or with the knight. Now with the move knight to e7, black has also blocked out a little bit the bishop's activity, to the potential bishop's activity of the dark square bishop. So that's why it's paralyzing a little bit further black's position. So here, after move knight to e7, Stockfish simply takes bishop to f4. We have now queenside castling, and now g3 played by Stockfish, simply kicking away the queen, queen to h5, and now bishop to g2. You have to protect, of course, your knight on f3. We have knight takes d5, knight takes d5, and now queen to d5. If you try rook to d5, I think you get simply h3, then you have to retreat with the bishop, and after king to f2, I think white has solved now all of the position problems. The rook could be also a long-term weakness here. The rook could be attacked maybe with c4, then even d5 could happen, and I think black could face some tactical problems now in this position. So that's why after move knight to d5, Leela c0 took queen to d5, and now king to f2. And Stockfish is now trying to secure the king, almost like Stockfish has castled, like playing something like rook to e1 and then king to g1. So it will be sort of castling by hand. At least we're trying to secure the king somehow, but we're losing also some tempi in order to get our king into security. So after move king to f2, we have knight to f6, normal development by Leela c0, rook to e1, and now bishop takes f3. Here Leela c0 is getting greedy, grabs the pawn for the initiative, but after queen to f3 and queen to d4, there's nothing so much I think that Leela c0 can do, because now after king to f1 you don't have any more good attacking opportunities. Maybe you can try one check, but again after king to g1 maybe you can try another check, but the king will simply hide, and now we can get use of our very annoying activity here on the long diagonal light course. This bishop is perfectly fine. We can also try to include this rook into the game, so I think again black is tactically lost. So that's why after move king to f1, here, as we said, Leela c0 has grabbed the pawn, but now the king is perfectly fine here on f1. The problem is now I think you cannot even take out this one, because you get rook to b1, and you see now you lose the b7 pawn. Then afterwards I think you lose also the c7 pawn. So again, it's something that black should resign immediately. So after move king to f1, here Leela c0 tried now to simplify the game by trading off the queens. It would be a perfect position I think now for black. Queen to d5, knight to d5, and okay, still white has this very active bishop here, but white is also down a pawn, so I don't see a good way here how white can win this position without the queens on the board. So that's why queen to e2. Here Stockfish retreats, is trying to stay with the queens on the board, and here Leela c0 tried queen to f5. We have queen to f3, again threatening some queen to b7 ideas, but I think Leela c0 should have simply played queen to d5, again trying to go into a perpetual and hope for a draw here, because queen to d5 is I think a must move. But Leela c0 played now here c6. Okay, this move c6 is temporarily blocking out the long diagonal, but whenever you are protecting your light course, you're weakening also a little bit now your dark course. That's I think the huge advantage when you have the bishops on the board. You see now whenever you maybe block out one bishop, then you're opening some diagonals for this other bishop. So that's I think how you should play with the bishop pair. You see now these bishops are very dangerous. They're aiming towards the king is a little bit cut off, and the only way to block out this potential position is simply to play bishop to d6. But this move bishop to z6, you see now in the continuation, will simply come a little bit too late, because after move c6, as we said, maybe here queen to d5, trying a perpetual much better, but now after move c6, Stockfish gets a tempo. Rook to e5, we have now queen to d7, and again Stockfish gets another tempo. Rook to a5, you know how Stockfish loves this rook lift, and whenever Stockfish lifts a rook, then Stockfish activates this rook all over the board and simply attacks now further this pawn on a7. Again, you have to protect your pawn, you have to play a6, and now queen to b3. Just because of this tiny little tempo, now you see Stockfish activated the pieces more and more. Now comes bishop to d6. As we said, that's the only good defensive move here, but the problem is now you get pinned here. Rook to d1, the bishop is pinned, and here Leela c0 doesn't react again I think correctly, plays the move queen to e7. It seems so that it's a good move because you're protecting your bishop on d6. At least we have sort of a nice setup, but actually you don't have to protect your bishop. There is a better way to defend its position. It's the move queen to g4. And now Stockfish I think would be forced to play a perpetual with bishop to f3, then queen to h3, and then bishop to g2, again queen to g4, bishop to f3, and similar stuff. The problem is now after the move queen to g4, you cannot take out here the bishop. If you try rook to d6, we'll simply take rook takes d6, bishop to d6, and now you get queen to d1. You have to play king to f2, and then you get knight to g4, a checkmate. So there's no way you take out the bishop here on d6. It's not a problem. Even if you try, for instance, something like here bishop to f3 and then queen to h3, if you try king to g1, it seems also like a natural idea. Maybe you should try this, but it's actually suicide now for white, because we will simply play bishop to f4. After g takes f4, the problem is this move, you get simply knight to g5, knight to g4. We're threatening checkmate. That's the main issue. If you, for instance, take bishop to g4, then you get queen to g4, and you see now also your rook is hanging. It's nothing different if you try even rook to d8. We're getting simply rook to d8, and again you're tactically lost. You cannot take the knight, of course. Bishop to g4, queen to g4, and again there's no good way to protect your d1 square. You're going to get checkmated. So really wild stuff. So as we said, after move rook to d1, here Leela c0 played queen to e7. Queen to g4 had to be played, and that's I think a draw for both sides. But after move queen to e7, you can guess what Stockfish does. Stockfish plays now bishop to h3 first decoying the king a little bit here to b8, but now after rook to d6, we have rook to d6, and look at this great bishop pair. This rook is now paralyzed there, and this moment Stockfish uses in order to improve these other pieces. We have now rook takes a6. You see tactics are all over the board. In the continuation, rook to e8 played by Leela c0, and now rook to a8. Look at this monstrous move, because if you try now king to a8, then you get even checkmated here, or you lose the queen here. Rook to, queen to a3. You have to again bring your king to a dark square, and now you get bishop to d6, and you have to give up simply the queen for a bishop. So really wild stuff. So that's why after move rook to a8 here, Leela c0 tried king to c7, but now bishop to d6, Stockfish gets back the exchange, and then you have to again take with the king to d6, because if you try with the queen to d6, it's not so good, because you get simply rook takes e8, knight takes e8, and then you lose your pawn on f7, and this pawn is very important. You lose also then the knight. I think you have to play something like king to d8, but I think losing this pawn is not so good. Queen to f5 now with some threats of queen to c8 are also very dangerous. So again, I think black is in serious trouble. So you have to take, after move bishop to d6, you have to take out with the king in order to further protect your pawn on f7. So in the game, rook takes e8, we have queen to e8, and okay, now the game is more and more simplified. We have reached now an endgame stage in which Stockfish has now the bishop for a knight, but the pawn count is the same, 3 versus 2 on the queen side, 3 versus 2 also from black's perspective on the king side. But actually that's sort of a pawn structure that the bishop loves. The bishop loves when pawns are all over the board. If the pawns would be maybe on the same side, then probably the game would be in draw. But now with this asymmetrical pawn structure, sort of, the problem of blacks is now that white can always create a pass pawn. Black can also create a pass pawn, but the bishop is a long range piece, and you always can catch up maybe from this diagonal your opponent's pawn when maybe black is creating here pass pawn on the king side. White's bishop can always activate. The white's bishop can play also a very important defensive role by protecting a potential promotion on the king side, but also can support a potential promotion on the queen side. So that's why the bishop is much better in this kind of endgame. So here after move queen to e8, now Stockfish grabs another pawn, queen to b7, we have queen to e4, we have queen to b8. Now after a couple of checks, Stockfish found a great way how to get the queen back without threatening be threatened by Leela c0 to grab some pawns, because it's very important now to protect our second rank. The second rank is the place where most of our pawns are. So if you lose now pawn, queen to h1 is not so dangerous anymore. We can simply play king to e2. You can try maybe some checks, but after king to d2, maybe a new check can happen. But now after king to c1, no checks are possible. Meanwhile, we can do again something, even try maybe queen to f4, trading off the queens, and then going into a favorable endgame where we have maybe here 3 versus 1. And I think on the a file, this pass pawn is very annoying to handle. So after move queen to f2, as we said, queen to h1 doesn't bring you so much, so that's why queen to a4. But now king to e1, Leela c0 grabs now another pawn, but with the move king to e1, at least the king's position has improved, and Leela c0 lost now tempo in order to grab the pawn. And meanwhile, now Stockfish is now on the attacking side, queen to f4, we have queen to d5, new checks, queen to c3, again some checks, queen to e7, queen to d8, and now going behind the king, very important, pushing the king towards the center. Now after king to c5, we have a b4. You see now Stockfish uses now every piece in order to creating sort of a mating net. After the move king to d4, we have queen to f4, knight comes in between, but now c3 deflects the king from the knight, and now after king takes c3, we have queen to e4, and now it's a completely winning endgame, at least in this top engine level. If I would play maybe this endgame maybe against I don't know, a top grandmaster, I'm not sure if I want to win this game because of this potential checks always by the black scheme. But you know how Stockfish calculates his position, so it's a +3 position here for white. After the move queen to e4, we have now queen takes a2, but again new checks are happening. Queen to f3, we have queen to e4, we have new checks here, check. And now after queen to d6, queen to d7, again a new check, some checks, and now bishop to g2, very important move. If you take, of course, queen to g2, then you get simply queen to a8, and the queen is on the same diagonal, so you cannot take out so far the bishop. So at least now in this particular moment, Stockfish uses the movement in order to activate back the bishop. After move bishop to g2, queen to d7, we have queen to d5, we have king to e7, again new checks, king to e6, and now bishop to h3. You see what kind of a motif now Stockfish uses. First with the queen getting the king towards the center, and when the king comes on a lie square, then Stockfish is trying this check, always trying to decoy the bishop. If you try, of course, to get somewhere with your bishop, then I think you're getting checkmated with the queen to f5. You have to move, and then you can get this one. Maybe you have to place something like king to f8, and then queen to d8 is checkmate. So that's why here in this position, after move bishop to h3, here queen to h3 was played, and now again we have this motif, queen to c8, and Stockfish simply takes. Let's see now the continuation. It's of course now completely winning endgame. Stockfish moves the king here. Okay, and after queen to g7, it was a checkmate. So brilliant game in the Vienna Gambit, but we have to also notice here that the move here d5 is not the best of moves for black. So as we said in the Vienna Gambit, f5 is breaking the position, f5 is opening the position in front of white king. That's the best way here to proceed. But okay, with the move d5 we have seen also some great opportunities for black, for white, but I still think this was a beautiful attacking game again by the fish. I'm really satisfied that I saw Stockfish playing the Vienna Gambit. As I said, I would love to see maybe an Evans Gambit game played by Stockfish against Leela Caesar. I think that would be simply awesome. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more attacking brilliances like this, check out my commented chess games played by computer series with some more Alpha Zero, Leela Zero, Stockfish games, and many more. And if you want to see the humans battling in their best chess games, check out my best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.